Welcome back to the High Ticket DM Sales Guide video series, part 4 of 5, where the main objective is to add $10,000 a month or more to your business via LinkedIn DMs. Now, in part 4, we're going to be diving into the sales conversation flow. Now, this is the real meat and potatoes of DM sales. And so if this is the first video you're watching in this series, make sure you go back and watch part 1 first, as it's kind of like walking into the movie theater during the climax. You don't know who any of the characters are. You don't know any of the plot leading up to it. You're going to be lost. So make sure you go back and watch part 1 first. If you need access to the High Ticket DM Sales Guide, there's a link below directly in the description for you to check out and claim it yourself. Now, with all the housekeeping out of the way, let's go ahead and hop into the sales conversation flow. Now, conversation flow and lead qualification. The purpose of DM conversations on LinkedIn is not to build relationships. It's not to talk about what you do, about yourself, why you started. It's not to book your calendar full of coffee chats or networking calls or spam your prospects with DMs and run them off and just question. Pitch slapping, throwing service in people's face is not what we want to do when it comes to sending LinkedIn DMs. You have 3 goals when it comes to DM sales. Number 1, see if the prospect fits your ideal client profile, actually asking the right questions to see if they're aligned with the individuals you're trying to serve. Number 2, assess if you can actually help them and if they want help, right? So can you actually help this person and are they actually open to help? And number 3, qualify them for a sales call so neither person is wasting time. And the main outcome you want is a booked discovery or sales call with a qualified prospect. Everything else, at least in the beginning, or especially once you get things up and running, is honestly going to be a waste of time. That's keeping you from reaching your revenue goals and growing your business. And so it comes down to focus. A big part of what I talk about, especially in part 1, having the right mindset, being able to actually execute, send the amount of DMs you need to send, is having focus. You need to be focused on the clear outcomes that you're wanting to move towards in your business to make sure that you actually reach those goals. And so you're only able to reach those goals by having clear focus. Okay. So now that that's out of the way, let's start diving into the actual sales conversational flow. Now, here are the 5 phases that break down an entire DM sales conversation all the way from the initial touch point to a booked meeting. All right. So the first piece is going to be the conversation prompted. I'm going to dive in and break this down here in a second. Second is going to be the discovery phase. After the discovery phase is going to be the qualification phase. Then you're actually going to propose call phase, and then the actual meeting booked. Okay. And so these are the 5 stages that you're going to use to turn a lead into a qualified sales call. And sales is actually a lot like chess in many different ways. And the way I'm going to break this down is that you really want to think about it in terms of long-term strategy. In part 3, when we talked about sending out the outbound connection request and just getting someone to accept the conversation, basically when it comes to this whole process, you just want the lead you're talking to be constantly just progressing through the different phases. You're not trying to really go for the meeting booked in the very beginning and shortcut and bypass a lot of the phases, because oftentimes it's not going to lead to very good results. And so you need to use patience as you actually progress through these stages. And in chess, it's like the opening. People have usual openers they'll stick to, usually like they're templated openers pretty much that they can use. And you can use templated messages in this case. You have the mid game, which is kind of more strategy back and forth. Usually most of the game really develops from the mid game and then the end game, right? And where you're actually moving things towards, going for a checkmate or finishing the game, right? In this case, a meeting booked. And so each phase has a different strategy you'll use to reach success within that phase, right? And so when it comes to conversation prompted, like I said, we're not going to be going for the meeting immediately, right? Or when you're proposing, or when you're in the qualification phase, you're not going to be asking questions that you would ask in the discovery phase, right? And so we want to make sure that we're always moving these leads throughout this process, asking the right questions, building that trust, presenting yourself as that trusted advisor, and then eventually going for that booked meeting. So there's a reason I have these processes in place. My clients use these processes because it works. It gets you more booked qualified sales calls. Now, with that out of the way, I want to hop into the first phase here, which is the conversation prompted phase. So this is where you're going to be initiating the conversation. And basically, there's 2 ways you can really classify this phase. The first is if you're just sending out that initial connection request and somebody actually accepts it, right? So they're going to be considered conversation prompted. Usually you're asking kind of a light rapport building question like, how's LinkedIn been going? How's business been going for you? Again, this is the question you'll ask within the actual connection request. And so once someone accepts that, they enter the conversation prompted phase. Now, another way to look at this is when it's been longer than 2 weeks since you've spoken with someone, because it's likely that you're not going to be able to really pick up the conversation immediately without some initial kind of prompting or like repersonalization. And so if it's been longer than 2 weeks since you've actually talked to someone, in some cases a month, maybe 2 months, maybe even more, you want to go ahead and repersonalize a message. And this message then enters the conversation prompted phase again. Okay. And so here's an actual structure that you can use to prompt the conversation. Now, if you notice, this is pretty similar to the actual personalized connection request message you would send out as, you send that when you're actually personalizing the request. And then you'd also send another message kind of like this if you're already connected with someone, you just haven't talked to them in a long time. And so the 3 ways I'll usually break this down is having something that actually grabs their attention, kind of like a hook, like saying, hey, I saw your post, or hey, it's been a while since we chatted. Something that's personalized, something that's relevant to them to actually grab that attention. Then you actually want to add value or personalize that message even further, in the middle section of that message. And then you want to ask the next question to move your conversation forward. Usually it's building light rapport if it's been a while since you chatted with someone. You don't want to go immediately saying, hey, Joe, it's great to chat. I haven't talked to you in a long time. How's it going with closing those high ticket deals, right? That's actually not too bad of an example, but like basically you don't want to be like in their face, like asking like super hard qualifying questions when it's been a while since you actually chatted with them, right? If you haven't actually spoken to the lead before, you can use the template based on the context of the lead for the inbound lead template. And then also the outbound connection request message here that I was just talking about. So that's going back all the way to part 3. You can kind of use some of those messages to actually really structure your message going out. This is, again, kind of the template you would use if you're re-engaging with a lead that went cold. You can say, hey, name, reference something from a previous conversation, something you saw about one of their recent posts or one of their updates. And then you can ask that personalized rapport building question, okay? So this is basically someone is considered the conversation prompted. If you've sent the last message, whether it's the initial outreach for a connection request, personalized connection request, or it's been longer than 2 weeks since you've spoken with someone, you've sent the last message, but they haven't responded yet, this conversation, this lead would be in the conversation prompted phase, okay? So now that's out of the way, let's move on to the discovery phase. Now, this is if once somebody responds, right? So somebody actually responds to your personalized connection request, someone responds to one of the messages you sent, if it's been a while since you talked with someone, the conversation enters that discovery phase. So they've had to at least respond at least once, have some back and forth, where it then enters the discovery phase. And these discovery phase questions and the way you're actually approaching this really consist of building rapport and then starting to highlight potential challenges. And so if you go back and remember part 1, actually part 2, talking about tonality, I talked about the 2 different ways, the 2 formatting rules you always want to have in place. And so you always want to make sure that you're engaging with the person, you're responding to them, you're having a conversation, but then you're asking the next question to move the conversation forward. And this is a common thing you're going to be seeing. You're never going to want to end an interaction with a lead over DMs without asking a question to move the conversation forward. Now, again, you don't want to go question. No, you're basically not reading any of their messages. You're just blasting questions. You're going to get ghosted doing that. But you do always want to make sure you're ending all of your messages with that question. And so here's some example questions I would actually use within the discovery phase to kind of start building some rapport and also asking a bit more pointed questions, right? And so if you notice, these questions aren't going to be like super direct, like in their face. They're going to be a bit more kind of chill, more laid back, kind of like softly poking and showing some curiosity. But it's not really going to be hard into like qualification or qualifying budget that we'll get to here in a little bit. So some questions like, how's LinkedIn been treating you? Right? Again, these questions can also be asked within your actual personalized connection request, but you can also ask them when you're starting that conversation. Hey, how's LinkedIn been going for you so far? How's it been going with getting clients here? What actually inspired you to start posting on LinkedIn? Another one I like is like, what inspired you to actually start your business? And then here's more kind of a targeted, specific question you can use that still fits in the discovery phase. Hey, curious to understand like what stage of business are you at? Are you working towards 5 figures a month, or are you already there in scaling? Okay. And so this discovery phase will usually last between 2 to 5 questions, 2 to 5 messages, right? And basically the main goal we want with the discovery phase is for them to start to almost gush about a certain problem or pain or issue or goal that they're trying to work towards that they currently aren't at, right? And so as soon as they really start to gush, that's when you'll transition into the actual qualification phase. But basically the goal with the discovery phase, you don't want to come off like too hard, too fast with some of these questions. And again, these questions are just examples. I want you to use your own questions that are specific to the individuals you're trying to serve. But basically the main goal is like, you don't want to come off too pushy, too hot, too fast in the beginning, as you're probably just gonna get left on red in most cases. You need to naturally kind of build that conversation equity by asking some really kind of more broader questions and then really start to narrow in with the questions you're asking as you build more equity in that conversation and the conversation actually continues. So once you get someone start gushing, which sounds kind of like, oh, I've been trying to use LinkedIn, but it's been a struggle, or hey, I could always generate more leads on LinkedIn, the story sort of thing, right? Like, or another example could be, yeah, I've been posting for quite a while, but I feel like no one's really interested. I don't really know how to find the right clients. Some people will give you just 2-3 paragraphs talking about all the pains, all the challenges, everything that's going wrong, which is good for you to be able to really work with. But some people are going to be, kind of more upfront about their pains and challenges. Some you might have to ask a few more questions to really start to have them actually open up and share maybe some of their challenges or goals they're working towards. So once they really start to gush, that's when things immediately transition into the qualification phase. And so after actually responding to their gush, and like empathizing, with the first part of the message, saying, hey, totally understand you might be dealing with that. I've seen many others who face similar issues. Maybe even add some advice in there as well. You want to end that message with, hey, might you be looking for some help with, getting 5 leads per week? For example, getting 10K a month, or solving that specific problem you told me about. You want to insert specifically in their words what they say they're struggling with. If it's funnels, say, hey, you might be looking for some help with some funnels, setting up a funnel for yourself. Or if it's content, hey, might you be looking for some help by, creating a content system that generates inbound leads. You want to use specifically what the main problem is that they actually express in their message. Very, very important that you're talking to their pains, their goals. You're using the exact words they're actually using when you're asking this question here. And the way I like to look at this is there's only a 2-letter difference between helping and selling, right? People like to be helped. So 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, sure. Hey, you might be looking for some help with this? Yeah, sure. I'm looking for some help. That sounds great. Now, here's the thing. It's like, hey, you want to buy my services? Yeah. You want to hop on a call so I can sell you my services? That's how you don't want to do it, right? But if you're looking for help, if you're opening up that open-ended question, hey, is this something you might be looking for some help with? 9 times out of 10, people are going to say sure. Okay. Then once they say sure, once they confirm, before we go, this is what I'll say. So before we go about setting up a call, do you mind if I ask a few questions to see if I can actually help? Right? This actually pre-frames the intention of a call. You're not going for it immediately, but you're basically saying, hey, before we would potentially go about setting up a call here, do you mind if I ask a few questions to see if I can actually help? And these are going to be the qualification questions we're going to dive into here in a second. And this is a great piece from Alex Hormozi. This is very well. The longer you can delay the ask, the more that you can ask for. You build more of that conversational equity. You build more of that trust. You're talking with someone for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. In some cases, a lot of these processes can go anywhere from, 5 minutes to chat with someone to booking a call all the way to, a year, maybe even more than that, right? And so the longer you can delay that ask, the more you can actually ask for. Now, you don't want to delay too long to where, some cases, you could have booked a lead, but you maybe asked too many questions, you pushed too far, you waited too long, took too long to get back to them. But the more you really delay that ask in terms of actually having them do something, the more value you add to them, the more genuine questions and compliments that you give them, that allows you to really ask for more. Maybe it's 15 minutes on a quick call, or maybe it's, wanting to learn more about what you do, whatever that may be. And so once you ask this question here, again, if they said sure to this, they're pretty much 100% going to say sure to this. If not, just ask why. It'd be very weird if they said no at this point. Then you want to ask 2 to 3 questions to further qualify this lead using the BANT framework. Now, what's the BANT framework? Glad you asked. So these questions, they should be solely focused around understanding the BANT framework. So B for budget, A for authority, N for need, and then T for timing. These are the questions you need to ask and know the answers to know if someone is actually ready to take action and purchase a service to help them achieve a goal they're working towards or solve a pain that they're currently facing. And so here's some examples of questions that I would use and have used in the past to that kind of fill the role of each one of these acronyms here. So the first piece, are you working towards 5 figs a month, or are you already there and looking to scale? This is actually a question you can kind of ask a bit earlier on. It also works very well in the qualification phase. But what this will tell you, if they're already there and looking to scale, it probably means that they have, if they're doing more than $10,000 a month, which is more than 5 figures, they probably have some additional cash flow they can actually invest. And so you don't want to ask them directly, say, hey, can you afford XXX service? You can more do that when you actually get on a discovery call. There's a certain way you want to phrase it, but you don't want to be super, super direct. So you want to ask questions that tell you multiple pieces of information for you to really gather where someone is and what their actual budget might be in this case. The next piece for authority. So like, do you make these sole decisions? Are you a decision maker? Or would there need to be a insert role involved, an actual decision maker, a CEO, a CFO, whatever that may be, right? This means, you don't want to hop on a call with someone, a sales call, if they actually like can't move things forward. They aren't the one making the final decision. And so you want to be able to make sure that they are or they aren't. So everyone involved needs to be on that call. And then what are 3 specific goals you're working toward right now, to know what their needs are, to know if you can actually help them? How many hours per week are you actually spending on LinkedIn, to get a feel for, how much time they're actually putting towards it, how much time they actually might have to commit to a new service and learning a new process. Okay. So you want to ask 2 to 3 of these questions to make sure that, and here's the thing as well, is like you might get some of these answers that you need to qualify someone in the discovery phase, maybe even in the first couple questions you're asking them, right? And so you really only want to ask the more targeted questions here for those gaps that you're missing in this BANT framework. Okay. And so once they actually answer that, they fit all the criteria to go ahead and hop on a sales call. This is where we're actually going to move to the proposed call stage, right? So very simply, I say exactly this pretty much every time, just broken up. Usually I'll send it like 3 separate messages. You can also send it in the same message. It doesn't matter as much, but when you send your messages in multiple messages, it makes it look more human, more personalized. Again, in a world of AI and automation, you want to try to use everything you can get to show that, hey, this is actually me. I'm sending you a message. I'm having this conversation with you. So you say, hey, based on what I've heard so far, I think I can help. Send. Let's set up a call to make sure. Send. How does date and time work for you? What I've been doing recently is just giving them a couple options, like how does Wednesday at 2 p.m. or Thursday at 1 p.m. Central work for you? And then they'll say, oh, Thursday works great. Oh, Wednesday works great. Actually, I can't do that. How's Tuesday at 9 a.m.? That's fine. And then at this stage, with the rest of the conversation you've already had so far, because you've built that equity, people have put time into having that conversation with you. My call booking rates at this point are like 80% plus. And so this is really going to show the power of like I said, it's like chess. You want to make sure you take the right moves in the right phases. You're nurturing through that process. You're building that trust. So when you get to the point where you can actually ask for them to hop on a call, you're going to have the highest likelihood to actually book that call and move things forward. And again, I actually really wouldn't recommend sending a Calendly link here unless they specifically request you sending over your meeting link, because you can have a lot of drop off here. You'll send it, no one will respond, they won't move things forward, and it's kind of like you're putting the action in their court, right? Making them take a little extra effort, even though Calendly can be pretty simple to use. It's still them taking the time to look at their schedule, 30, 40 seconds, a minute long. But basically here, you can actually ask them directly. They'll say, hey, 9 a.m. Central works for me. Then you can say, okay, hey, what's your best email? And they'll send it over, and then you'll send out that invite, okay? So stick to asking what the date and time work for them. Grab their email, book it in. This is also going to give you higher booking rates and make sure you don't have a drop off after you actually propose the call. Happened to me for quite a long time when I was just dropping the link. I was like, no one's booking. Why is no one booking? But then when I started to really transition into like saying, hey, I'll take care of this for you. Like I'll do all this for you. I'll get the call on our calendar. Just what's the best time that works for you and what's your best email, and I'll handle the rest. It makes it a lot easier for them, less friction in that process. Therefore, you'll also be booking more calls using that approach. Okay. So that's when you actually propose the call. Let's talk about when you actually book the meeting. So when they send you that email, and they send you the final piece there, that's when you actually book in the time. And then you also want to send over any resources like a VSL or a lead magnet that you need to watch before a call. I believe I talked about this in part 3, but it's more of an advanced strategy. But if past clients have bought your service in the past after they watched a certain video sales letter, which is a VSL, maybe they watched a certain lead magnet, maybe they watched a client testimonial, you want to have them actually review those resources before actually hopping on a call with you to really warm them up in that process. And there's also ways you can do it. You can do a 15-minute discovery. Usually I'll do like a 15-minute kind of quick discovery call for outbound leads for those who are more cold. And then for individuals who are inbound coming to me, like wanting to purchase, I'll usually go for like a 30, 45-minute call and handle everything from there. But we're not talking about sales calls here in this guide. So that being said, give them a friendly reminder the actual morning of that sales call. Once it's booked in, saying, hey, we still on to meet here in an hour, in 2 hours. And then you go ahead and book that call. Now, if they close on that call, fantastic. You go ahead and move them to a client list, keep them tracked, get them onboarded, all that good stuff. Now, if they don't close this time around, but you really do feel like they are a good fit, you want to continue to nurture these leads every 1 to 2 months or so. And this is with new content, this is with lead magnets, with new offers, with campaigns. Like just because someone said no now doesn't mean they're going to be a no a month from now, 2 months from now, maybe even in some cases a couple weeks from now, right? And so you want to make sure you're always nurturing those leads. And this is why we have lead magnets. This is why we actually track our leads so we know when to follow up with them. And we'll talk about kind of follow up and tracking in the final video in part 5. And so basically when you're sending messages like this, like don't make it super spammy. You really just want to trigger that interest again, see if they're still having the same problem that you can actually come in and solve. And here's an example message you can actually use if it's been like 1 or 2 months since you've brought someone through that sales process or had a really good conversation, like you maybe even got to the qualification phase, maybe you just didn't book a meeting, right? So you say, hey, I remember when we last chatted, you were looking to insert specific goal, like reach 20K months. Like, did you give up on that, or like what actually happened, right? And so you're kind of asking, you're kind of poking. In this case, this question's a bit pointed to where it's like, oh, I didn't give up on it. Like I'm doing this now. I do this, and actually can get a pretty good response. I would use something pretty similar to this. Also, sharing any messages about any offers or campaigns that you're running would be great to one of my leads who you've gotten on sales calls before, but maybe didn't actually close. So with that being said, this is start to finish the sales conversation flow from starting that conversation all the way to actually booking a meeting with a prospect and hopping on a sales call with them, right? And so the biggest thing here is that you're making sure you're tracking things. And so I want to go ahead and show you and hop over to the spreadsheet here to show you what the actual phases look like and how it breaks down. So coming to the spreadsheet that most of you should have access to. If not, it's on page 5 of the high ticket DM guide. You should have done your calculations earlier on with the DM volume. But basically, I have an example page here of how you can actually start using these status. Okay, so as you can see here in the status column, you have all the different phases that the individuals can be a part of to make sure that you're tracking them as they move throughout the process. Say for example, oh, this person started to vent to me. They started to really gush. I asked them the question if they're looking for help to solve their problem. Let's go ahead and move this now to the qualification phase, right? And so with that being said, this will really help you understand and kind of prioritize the leads you want to go after, similar to what we talked about in part 3. In most cases, I would really focus on like the people who've been sent a Calendly first and actually like booked a meeting. I'll talk about exactly how you'll want to use all this information in the actual last video and really start tracking some metrics down here, which is a lot of fun stuff. But basically, I would really prioritize the ones I've actually sent a Calendly link to and even booked a meeting with, right? Because usually those are the hottest, they're showing the most intent. And so I'd definitely get back to them first. And so when approaching follow-up, again, we'll talk about this in part 5, I would really prioritize the leads that are further along the actual sales process and work my way backwards, right? So go to sent Calendly and then go to those individuals I've actually proposed a call to, and then those I'm actually currently qualifying, the discovery phase and conversation prompted. So with that being said, that breaks down the 5 different stages of the sales conversation flow. It's been an absolute pleasure to walk you through this video, this part 4. This is, again, the real meat and potatoes of the actual DM sales process, being able to massage those leads and bring them throughout your sales process in order to book them into a call. And again, big thing is patience. Keep moving forward, keep asking the right questions, tracking everything, and you're going to be moving your way towards success. So stay tuned for the final video, part 5, coming up, where we'll be discussing follow-up and how to actually use the lead tracking sheet. And that being said, it's been an absolute pleasure. See y'all in part 5. Take care.